Welcome to another episode of Authentic Storytelling. I'm your host, storytelling guide, mindset elevation coach, and publisher, Linda Joy. When I first crafted this series, um, it was really about bringing the wisdom of women's stories to life and to remind you and all our listeners that we have the power to change our story at any time. And joining me today is a dear friend, Bonnie Snyder. And this episode is about The Divine Hand Leads Me Home, which is the title of her story in Divine Synchronicity, Women's Stories of Magic, Miracles, and Manifesting. And before I introduce her, I want to share the quote. As you know, I open every episode with a quote. And I ask that you just, put your hand on your heart if you're led and just take the words in. And Bonnie's quote is, when we align with something and move into the flow, if we are taken off track, the hand of the divine guides us back on course. And that's been my experience in my life, and I can't wait for this conversation. Bonnie Snyder is an intuitive life balance coach and catalyst. She is a diplomat in energy psychology and a best-selling author. She's passionate about supporting highly sensitive women, intuitives, empaths, and creatives to let go of limiting beliefs and patterns that hold them back and embrace their sensitivities as the gifts and superpowers that they truly are. All her details are in the notes below, but you can visit her at diamondpathways.com. Welcome, Bonnie.
Oh, Linda, thank you so much for this opportunity. Love being
Well,
here.
your story really resonates with me. And that title, The Divine Hand Leads Me Home, it was like, oh, because for me, it's exactly what your quote says. Every time I feel like I'm going kind of like on that wandering, meandering path, which is taking me off my purpose, signs, synchronicities, um,
Mhm.
conversations bring me back. So, in the writing of your story, I always love to ask the guest, like, what was the key theme, a life lesson that you learned from writing your story using the authentic storytelling method?
Well, Linda, it was interesting. I almost didn't write the story, but I had a prompting because knowing that things were going to change, that divine hand, whether we call it the divine hand, the divine, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, during a challenge, during a transition, during a change, it's always guiding us. Even when we look outside and the signs are not pointing to the alignment that we want, that it's always there. And I think that's so important during a challenge. And especially if you're highly sensitive, because we take everything in and then it's hard for us to hear those signs. So just to remember that it's always there. It's always guiding us, even when we feel like it's not.
That's a beautiful reminder because we all know life can get lifey, right? And for me, um, I need to find moments of stillness throughout the day to
Mhm.
stay in my own energy, to stay in this place of being in my heart and not my head so that I can, I guess, receive the signs, the messages, and really just to hear my own wisdom.
Yes,
So,
yes,
and
absolutely.
spaciousness is important to you also, I know.
It's really important because taking in so much information, which we know as highly sensitives, our brains are a little bit different. So we process a lot of information. And you said it, there is no way we can tap into that wisdom that we have, and we have so much of it because there is so much information there for us, both seen and unseen, that if we're not quiet, that little impulse, that little nudge, we miss it. So now it always comes back around, I have found, but we miss it.
Yeah, and that means our path, we continue down. I don't want to say the wrong path because I believe every path leads us to where we're meant to be, but instead of taking the shortcut by following the signs and divine guidance and internal wisdom, we sometimes go this roundabout route because we're so in our head and so busy.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's was my journey that I didn't see the signs. So all of a sudden I'd be like 5 miles off my path and then go, oh, Lynn, if you had just listened, it would have been this way. We all learn, right? So Um, as you discovered through the authentic storytelling writing process and that whole program, it's not just a writing process, is it? It's a invitation to women to use storytelling to connect with your higher self, to peel back the layers of limiting stories that you've been carrying for years. And this empowers you to craft a new story. So how did writing your story, you've published with a couple books with us, how did writing your story in divine synchronicity um, either heal, empower, or inspire you on your journey?
Well, that's such a wonderful question, Linda. It's funny. As I said to begin with, I wasn't sure I was actually going to write the chapter, but knowing that we were going to make a transition, a big move, I was quiet. You mentioned being quiet. So I was very quiet and very prompted to write this story to remind me about the divine flow and being supported because it was really a challenge. And I wanted to be reminded that even though things were not going in a straight line or wouldn't go in a straight line, that there was a plan, there was a flow with it. So it was interesting writing the story. There were even places writing the story that I wasn't even aware until I wrote the story, Linda, that that flow was there because things were going, as you were saying, they were going awry and I couldn't see that straight path. I couldn't see the alignment that was in my heart for where we wanted, but yet it was there. So that was one of the really fun points. Going, wow, there's even more here than I realized that that flow is here. And so I knew that writing it would help, but I also took many times during our 6 month process and I reread the story because, as you alluded to, I would find myself stressed or frustrated, and I would reread it and remind myself, get out of the way, surrender, let go, Bonnie. And there was a moment, and I think I had even mentioned to you in one of our conversations where I remember the exact same moment that I wrote about in the book, where I was so frustrated, just sort of downtrodden, Linda, and concerned that we would never find what we were looking for. And at that moment, and again, it goes back to that chapter in the book, saying to myself, you've written about this, Bonnie. Take time, be still, ask questions, be curious, let go. And I did, and I got a prompt to do something different. I surrendered. I was like pushing against it. Okay, I feel it in my body, not in my head, in my body to make a different, and I moved back into the flow.
And I love this because this is such a powerful message. Ladies, we all go through times in our life. Bonnie was selling a house, buying properties, and all um, the stuff that can come up with that, right? Like it's a difficult time. But
Mhm.
what I've noticed, and I've been in that same place, Bonnie, at times, is when we're trying to make things happen,
Mhm.
pushing, demanding, or I call lovingly, because this was my title, I was micromanager of the divine. And that's what you're talking about is when you started to remake the story of your truth, right? You're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm not trusting and allowing this process to flow. That's when you came back home to yourself. That's when you came back home to letting the divine lead the way to your next best location. Is that what it felt like to you?
Oh, absolutely. And I kept getting the message from the outside world and actually from a couple of friends because sometimes I think we try to control. I was pushing against the word control, but I think control, we're trying to keep ourselves safe. We want it the way we want it. And do we always know what's absolutely best for ourselves? Not always. And
Mm.
so I had to let go of something that I still pushed against a little bit, but you know how sometimes you can look at the bigger picture and say, that's a little piece. I may not like that little piece, but let's look at the bigger, more, the whole picture and see how that's supporting you. And so that little piece you get used to, you let it go. Um, but you know that you're in the right place. You can feel it in your heart, feel it in your body. And it's been quite a walk. But
Yeah.
I can't tell you how that storytelling and the way that your guidance to write it with the prompts really made a difference for me, because instead of it being a head process, it became a heart process.
Yeah, and when we're in the midst of anything big in our lives, whether it's a job transition, career, any kind of transition, it throws us out of our comfort zone because I know you and I both talk to a lot of empaths, sensitives, highly sensitives, intuitives, and for those who identify that way, when we're doing this big thing and making a big change in our life, it brings up every little internal nudge within saying, oh, I feel uncomfortable. And what I've discovered for myself is the more I trust, the more things flow. That was a big one for me, Bonnie. That was a big one as a recovering micromanager of the divine. Now I go, I can only do what I can do, but the divine sees the whole picture. So I love that you said that, because how I look at life is the divine source, God, whatever your source of love is, has the bird's eye view, has the eagle's view of what is going to unfold in our life. Sometimes we don't because we're up here. And what you said was so beautiful. When you came into your heart, you could see that that little thing that you were focusing on that might not have been going right in your situation, when you pulled back, you saw a bigger view of going, okay. I love that you shared that, because we have that tendency to zoom in so close on what's wrong that we don't see all the beauty and blessings and magic around us. So that was beautifully said. That really resonated with me.
Well, and the idea too, Linda, and you said it, that the universe sometimes brings it back to you again to see if you learned the lesson. And for me, it was that lesson of trust.
I think that's a big lesson for all of us on the spiritual path. It's one I'm living right now as I make big changes in my life, my business, and um, it might not make logical sense,
Right.
from people looking from the outside looking in, but it's my soul's truth. And I have been shown over and over again, when I just trust and follow, magic unfolds. When I let go and trust. So as we come to the last question, I just wanted to share thank you for that, because I think we all need to take a bird's eye view on our life and stop looking at those little details that kind of rub us like sandpaper. So, as we've been discussing, authentic storytelling is really all about diving deeper
Mhm.
into the stories we tell ourselves. And it's a way to break free of self-imposed limitations so we can embrace a new narrative. As you so beautifully explained, that's what happened to you. So as we come close to closing out our conversation, what is a wisdom, sacred reminder, a message that you would like to share with our viewers?
I think anytime there's a change, transition, challenge, want to go, be still, let go. Know that you're always supported and guided by that source of love, always. And when you're stressed and feeling worried and overwhelmed, be still. Get out in nature, ground yourself, come back into you. I say, come home to yourself so that you can hear those nudges, those wisdoms, and allow that impulse to come through, and it will.
I love that. Come home to yourself. And that's such an important message, because whether you're an empath, sensitive, or highly sensitive, for all of us, life gets noisy. And what happens, the longer we stay in our head, um, it's harder to hear our wisdom, which is what this whole conversation has been about. It's also harder to see the signs. So now I use my body and emotions as a signpost for where I am. If I'm
Mhm,
feeling anxious, I'm like, where am I right now? Am I
mhm,
projecting into the future?
mhm. Or going
Um, Yeah,
past.
if I'm feeling a little sad, what am I thinking about from the past that I'm bringing in? And then it helps me recalibrate and go, is that what I want to experience in this moment? It just stops the pattern. And then I, as you said so beautifully, I come back into my heart and make a choice from this moment, not
Mhm.
projecting forward, um, and not bringing the past like a heavy bag with me. And I used to do. I had a steamer trunk filled with muck. So, Bonnie, I want to say thank you for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and numerous books with Inspired Living Publishing, but especially in divine synchronicity, because I think we all need to be reminded of the signs and synchronicities and miracles all around us.
If we just let go and surrender, right? And go into the flow.
So true. And I want to invite everyone. All of Bonnie's info is in the show notes below, but her URL is diamondpathways.com. Please visit her, learn more about her and her sacred offerings, and of course, stay in touch with her. And I want to leave you all with a message of what story are you telling yourself that it's time to change? Because you do have the power to rewrite the narrative of the story or labels that you've been carrying for years. So please be sure to watch all episodes of Authentic Storytelling. Their love, their wisdom of my guests will really touch your heart and inspire you to live a deeper, more authentic life. So Bonnie, blessings, my friend. Thank you, everyone.